I think greed is just part of humanity. You just need to be aware of that.
You think police are bad people? Are they justice warriors?
I have a different view.
Like, this is the whole reason why power corrupts, because power just gives you like a shitload more options and opportunities to do something bad. It's not that it corrupts, it just exposes what was already there inside.
It's very hard for such people to trust anyone. You know that trust is instrument, is a practical thing, and you can manipulate it. You will expect it from others.
Can you agree with all what I'm saying here?
In your worldview, justice is about equality, right? It's equality.
Retaliation is also in GTO too, because if there's no retaliation, you get perpetually fucked over if it's a reoccurring problem.
Am I revealing too much? Tell me, I will stop.
Are you trying to hint something here?
This is Winning the Game of Life, presented to you by Dan Jungleman Cates.
I with the legendary Alexander Kostritsyn, who's won over $10 million of online poker, $9 million on his account Hoizel alone, playing highest stakes at mixed games and more, winning tournaments. In addition to this, he is one of the most successful Russian players in all of history, comparative to even Truteller himself, Timofey Kuznetsov. Alexander, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dan. Hi guys.
What are some of your biggest sessions, your biggest losing sessions, your biggest winning sessions? I know you had a terrible summer one time. I know that happened, but what about those bigger sessions? You must have won money at some point. Other than, I know you lost like 3 million one session in one summer in Bobby's room. I know that happened. Must have got that money from somewhere. He didn't steal it from some oligarch or something.
I don't remember actually, but there are some sessions where I won or lost some millions.
Against Phil Ivey, maybe, against Truteller. Who else did you play? Crazy Elior, I don't know. Did you play against Gus Hansen?
Yeah. We played for quite a few years, maybe more than a decade.
What do you think? Are you winning or losing over $1 million against Gus Hansen?
I think I lost on 2000 in Deuce to 7 in 2K4K.
Anything.
We played on full tilt. We lost like $1 million, but overall I think I'm up.
Where are you getting all this money from? What the fuck? We're hearing about all these money you're losing. You must have won it from somebody.
I'm not a good manager of money. Yeah, I put them in pots, and they don't come back sometimes. So
Okay, well, apparently Alex found his money from somewhere. He doesn't know where. Well, tell us, how did you get to being good at all the games? Do you have like a method of like, there must be a way that you reached nosebleed mixed games. That doesn't just happen on accident. There must have been like ways that you studied, people that you played along the way, stakes that you played along the way. Where's like the in between? You just started playing, you came from a rich family, you just played okay, and then that's not the story, is it?
I started 20 years ago, 2005. Actually, I remember the date, 5th of February 2005. So some guy posted their hand histories, how they played limit hold'em, like 10, 20, or 5-10 limit hold'em back in the day when it was just like some data, some text, so it's not visual. And I would print like 200 or 400 pages and come to university with those. Don't listen what is happening there in university. And I would just like use highlighter and marker, and would just like look at all the spots they reached showdown and try to reverse engineer the logic, like what they were thinking at the point, and why I see here they play the same hands differently than the other time. And I notice a difference. There's like short stack, there are like specific player on a big blind. So I would start notice some patterns and just kept looking. I don't know. He just made this guy. His name on forum was Mihirani Su. It would be translated like not being a shit, like not caring, but with whatever. It's funny in Russian. And then he would make a present to forum. He would give away all the hand histories. And I don't know who else would just use them, but it was public and everybody could do that. So I would spend my days this way. Then I played a lot and was keeping track of wins. Like, okay, I passed $10 sit and go. Now I go to $20 sit and go. Like I thought it's enough. Just win one. It's like I passed the level. It's like chess or StarCraft or whatever. Yeah, it was very, very funny. Yeah. But that was the approach in the beginning. And then I just played. I used all the money I would win against weaker players to play against better players. And I would think that it's an investment that I would very not trying to win, but very playing my best and very attentively thinking what they are doing and how do they exploit me. Like if they notice some weakness, they would be the first ones to spot it. And then when I come back to other stakes or playing against other players, I would already be prepared. Like I would try those tricks of those players against other players, and it's like in two rooms there are two grandmasters, and I would just come to one room and wait for the move. They make a move, I return back, I make that move against the player, and I would see how they react, and I go back and forth. So I was just passing some things and learning along the way. It was the approach for first couple years. Every evening before I go to sleep, I would open all of the high stakes tables, and in the morning when I wake up, first thing I do, I spend 30 minutes or an hour just going through every hand that happens, even without showdown. I would just again like reverse engineer what they're doing then.
So what you say is you study all their hand histories and you use moves from one grandmaster and you use them on other grandmaster until you grandmaster. Is that right?
Yes. I'm just not inventing. I'm just taking stuff, and I'm quite good at implementing strategies that I learn. Like I can adapt quickly, but not inventing. That's hard for me.
And actually, I did a bit of a similar thing. If someone did something that was very tough to play against, like check raising versus delayed c-bet, I would just apply it to my own game. But yeah, something like that worked. It sounds like you didn't use much software, any solvers, anything like that, or get a card runner subscription, none of that shit.
Oh, I had Run It One subscription and Card Runner subscription. Yeah, I was watch like Phil Galfond or stuff, especially when we play the games. So it's like so nice when somebody just posts their video and we just play against them. You can get into their head, how they're thinking, and then just understand how they will interpret all the moves. So I would think it's the craziest stuff they could do to just like make those videos and to show their thinking process. I would also avoid I quit tournaments over 10 years ago because they started to reveal cards, and I wouldn't come to like poker shows because they reveal cards also. I just like, what is the point? Like, okay, I win few hundred thousand, but for the rest of my career further, they will know how I think. And that's about videos, yeah. And for solvers, I studied some, maybe spent about a couple hundred hours myself. And also I asked my friend who would prepare some tables and would do some more routine stuff. I would ask him to research specific spot, to print some tables. I would have a lot of these printed tables with color that I would just annotate and just try to find the patterns.
What patterns? What do you mean?
In Omaha High-Low, for example, like from Monker or whatever, or from some other solvers, I would just notice that specific low draw or specific high hand would play very differently than main range. Like I see that it should be 40% c-bet, but with specific part of the range it's 20, and with other part it's 60. I would come with the baseline, and then I would notice patterns where the biggest deviations, and so I just highlight them and just think of them, and spending not too much, but from little stuff, my brain works this way that I just notice little things and extrapolate quite quickly. I don't need to remember much, or basically almost not play it against solvers like practice, because I would just start and then I just go dig into spots, not to playing. And I never use Hold'em Manager or any HUDs or anything visual during the game. It just distracts me. I bought all of them just in case. I tried all of them. I forced myself like try to a week or two, but they never stick. Just those numbers, like how much they fold, how much they 3-bet and c-bet and fold to c-bet and check raise. This just distracts me because I quickly notice myself, and usually what I notice is more speaking than numbers. I would put notes on players.
I did kind of all of the above. I actually did use the trackers. It was useful in some circumstances, but then I would like to talk about a couple examples of these patterns that you recognized to help understand a couple of the games, especially with no limit. If you do it with no limit, I can talk about some things related to that with no limit. I can give you a couple examples for myself. I did a bit of a similar thing. I didn't even study the solvers that much and learned various patterns, but it looked like I was a bit wrong. One thing I've been doing lately is just proving that very certain abstractions don't really lose much EV, or certain abstractions gain a lot of EV. I'll give you an example, then it's your turn. So I looked at actually under the gun versus the big blind on an ace high board. It looks like betting 100% of your range basically doesn't lose any EV small and no limit in comparison to checking, but you can create a strategy where there's like checking and betting, and that strategy doesn't need to be perfectly balanced because that loses almost no EV unless someone like knows exactly what you're doing. I looked at A7-4, under the gun for opens versus big blind, no antes. All of that stuff's important. That's just an example. And can you give just an example of no limit of like patterns that you recognize that I could throw out some possibilities that helped you to learn the game so you don't have to sit there studying? We're trying to help the lower stakes players.
For method, you just note baseline for some strategy. So you go from the highest abstraction, just like average c-bet percentage. Then you go to a bit lower abstraction, like what categories of hands, how they deviate from this baseline. Then you go lower, how are sub-buckets, like sub-categories. And then you go for specific blockers and specific suits and cards. And you try to notice something that repeats itself. And if it doesn't repeat, you don't look further. You note this down and you just cross it off if it's some random stuff that only solver could use. And you also go for the same spot and change one variable. For example, in PLO, if you go for 100 big blind stacks, and for example in button against big blind, it would be if you pick only one bet size in position and certain spots more disconnected, whatever. Just like, for example, you bet 60% of the pot, but if its stacks are 40 BB, then you go for 40% C bet size. So you just notice by looking at the same spot and see that it's just prioritize something different. And you try to think, okay, if I'm using this size, what are implications of that? How does it differ stack to pot ratio on turn? What are ranges on turn now, and if their ranges before are different, and that affects bet sizing. But I'm trying to speak like normal people, it's for this low stakes guys.
Actually, no limit, here's an example. So deeper in no limit, you have to change your pre-flop ranges because of how, tournaments and versus cash games, because when you play shallow, it's important to have top pair. It's a similar short deck too, actually. You want more things that block the hands that are going to 3-bet you, such as an ace in your hand, and then make top pair a lot. Things like king 10, king jack, king queen go up in value, generally speaking. There are some implications on the lower boards as well versus the big blind defense. Like now all of a sudden, leads make a bit more sense when you're in the blinds versus deep, but they don't really make as much sense when your range is capped, because now like the person who's deep can theoretically, you could think of how this applies to PLO too, like ace high boards or C, but much higher with a higher frequency than the lower boards. There are some caveats to that, by the way. I learned a very interesting counter example of sorts. Apparently, like a board like ace 7-2 is check raised at a pretty high frequency from big blind versus button, or big blind versus under the gun. I didn't know that. That's definitely a surprise. I forget what the logic was, but basically that I guess that ranges were just really polarized.
And you have no draws basically in positions. There are no draws, and but actually big blind doesn't have 3-4-5 too much as well. Whatever.
That's 3-4-5 more than under the gun.
Yeah.
In the PLO. Anyway, going back to no limit and tournaments and cash games. In cash games, when you get deeper, if you're playing at stiff competition, you do want more you want to have a bit more suited connectors in comparison to Broadway. You want to like not have so many Broadway type combinations that people are like quite competent in fighting back deeper in poker, or there's antes and things like that. But that's not really true in tournaments on the whole, because it's just always shallow. And that's not really true in Bobby's Room too, where I don't know where you're getting this idea that these Bobby's Room guys are just slayers, man. Like, have you been paying attention to what's been going on in Bobby's Room? Have you been paying attention to, have you just been having earphones on the entire time while you've been in Bobby's Room? Have you been paying attention to half the shit they fucking do and say? Like,
when I'm there, I try to pay attention quite to everything, but my English is not so good to understand different accents.
Before we move on, can you give another example of how you would learn a heuristic from a game based on the patterns, based on the variables you changed to see it move according to whatever you changed? Do you want me to give you some contexts?
Yeah, just any situation, just not no limit hold'em, okay? Because I'm not no limit hold'em guy.
That's the one where you have the most power with the solvers, by the way. I don't understand why.
Finding patterns that's hard to notice just by looking at software, like some leak buster or whatever it's called, that it just shows some pattern. I think it's boring, and it also doesn't leave any advantage for me when I study the game. So when solvers became popular in No Limit Hold'em, I quit No Limit Hold'em, and same for PLO. I stopped playing heads up PLO even though before I was playing all the stakes.
Wait, but you sounded like you were using the solvers to figure out advantages in Limit 08. I'm confused.
I spent like, I don't know, 50,000 hours playing poker in my life, and maybe 200 hours of those with solvers. So I don't know if I could be called solver guy. Usually look at those and just use those strategies a lot and think a lot of them. So solvers help like hugely. Super big thing. And also speaking to some players like you and others, sometimes discuss some things and just little examples, little heuristics, they give me so much that I can extrapolate to all the 20 or 30 games or whatever, how many games I'm playing.
What's a heuristic to extrapolate to? You know, let's not aim for 30 games. Let's aim for like 10. What's a heuristic that works for 10 different games?
Okay, so you come to river spot, for example, and think how many sizes you want, and that is based on the range, the range you come at the river. For example, you have some much better hands like top range, and your opponent is capped. You doesn't have those, so you want to
Sure.
definitely want to have the bigger sizing up to all in or whatever POC and public
Sure.
games. Then also you understand that you are like behind the middle of the range and you are ahead in the bottom of the range because of the line that was played in positions. And then you decide, okay, here I want two sizings. One is large and one is
Mhm.
say 1/3 of a pot. And
Okay.
then you think how you want to fill those sizings. First, you go for overall percentage you want to be betting. Like say you want to bet on river 50% and your range like supports that. It allows you to bet so frequently. Okay, 50%. Then you think, okay, I want two sizings. One is large because I have top of my range ahead of those of their top range. And I also want a smaller sizing, remove bluff catchers from a range or whatever. I will try to fill in each of those sizings with different hand categories. So some hands want to bet and 3-bet. Some hands want to bet big from start. Some hands just want to like block bet. Yeah, just bet and fault against raise. And some hands you want to check and bet against their betting. You understand that in position sizings are a bit bigger, a bit larger. So they would bet 2/3 of a pot, for example. So this gives you idea that now you have like 3 sizings actually. When you check, you get a sizing of 2/3 of a pot. And when you bet, you get 1/3 of a pot and full pot or over pot. And then you try to distribute your range into different buckets, understanding how different parts of opponent's range will react to different your different strategies. Either you're checking small betting or betting large. And then if you are in their mind, if you understand their thinking, first you know the theory, like you know what is the range in general, what range they come here to this spot. And then you just go into the brain and starting calculating like, okay, if I bet 1/3 and I understand that they will under raise, they will not raise with say third flush or some second pair with top kicker and no limit hold'em. They will not raise. You just bet 1/3 of a pot or even 1/4 or 1/5. You can adjust further, but general idea is that you start with something that will exploit their weakness. If they don't raise enough, you just bet large yourself when you have a big hand and you bet like make a protection bet or block bet with hands that will get some value but not as much if you bet big or if you check. If you check, they will bet 2/3 of a pot and you lose more. So you're trying to understand these two parts.
I know what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to summarize so that the people can understand a bit better. But you're explaining kind of how game theory works, at least on the river, in all big bet games. So basically, you have a set of strategies, and you assign how they align with, firstly, how opponents should respond to each of your various different strategies, or at least you have some kind of idea of that, and more importantly, how they actually do respond. So as an example, when you bet small, if they don't raise all the hands that they're supposed to, and you lose less versus the bigger hands, examples would be hands that are like slightly behind some of the ranges that you can get value from, worse hands that are not really attractive check call type hands. You often bet those a smaller size to block bet. Well, it's not really block bet, but you get a little value from the worst parts of the range and you save money against the better parts of the range. If you know that they're not going to raise all those parts, you tend to like bet smaller with all those parts of your range and just auto fold to a raise. And then with the larger parts, then if you know they're not going to raise, maybe you go for a check raise if you're out of position, right? Because they're not going to raise you, and you get the 2/3 value bet plus like some fraction of whatever the percent they call a raise. And you can do some kind of like, if you're getting really sophisticated, a rough version of simultaneous equations. Well, no one actually uses algebra for this. Only really sophisticated people do that. Maybe like Sauce and like use algebra in these situations. Like, fuck that. But you could look at things through the solver and experiment with some possibilities. If you lock various parts of people's ranges, then you can like get an exploitative strategy out of all this by thinking basically, how does your overall strategy play against their overall strategy, and deciding what better lines are possible than what is given in GTO by just taking lines that you know they're not going to respond properly with. Like examples we gave are, again, the bet really small with a shitty part of your range if they don't raise enough. And then also, I don't think you mentioned the check raise. I'm going to mention the check raise if they don't raise enough. That's just something that happens quite a lot. And if they fold too much versus a larger size bet, you check a lot of the value hands, you get more bluffs, as another example. Do you want to add to a couple other possibilities just to simplify this like kind of big theme we're talking about?
Yeah, the simplest like toy game for this would be any limit game. Everything that we just discussed applies to limit games. It's much easier. You only have one siding, and you choose either you bet 3-bet, bet call, bet fold, check call, check raise, whatever. So I think this logic and deep understanding of this situation came from like Deuce to 7 and Limit Hold'em, especially when Limit Hold'em CFOs. We built a tool that allows to draw hands from CFO's side, and you could play against CFOs. Not 100 hands, not waiting in a line, you could just play a lot. And I think I played quite like maybe 30 hours or 40 hours and learned a lot from that. And that applies to big bet games afterward. I think it's easier to start with limit game. And one thing I want to mention about this patterns, in my approach to the game, it's more important that you find patterns not only in theory in solvers, but you also notice patterns in people's how they think. They much less sophisticated than solver. They're not so balanced. They don't have billions of possibilities and trying to have different parts of different strengths of their range in different lines. They're just simple, usually. They have, 100 possibilities, and those extrapolate so well to everything they do, not only in poker, but in life and everywhere. And if you're attentive in life, when somebody speaks to you, you understand that somebody is like, their ego is suffering. It wants to get some recognition, for example. You just knowing that, hearing their vocabulary, what they speak about, you understand how they will react in a large pot when you are against them. They will not give up. They will just try to outplay you. They will catch your bluff. That is never happening in the situation when they always calling. So you just understand their behavioral thing and apply that to their poker thinking. And same for some people who are like rational guys. They decide they don't make stupid mistakes, because only fish make stupid mistakes. They're not gonna risk. They play perfect poker. And if you open some hand, if you open a hand that definitely everybody knows should not be opened, you're stupid, whatever. And those types of guys, they're so predictable. You just understand they never deviate from a baseline. They're like a stupid version of solver. Solver can surprise you a lot. I was so much surprised by little things, and then you start thinking about them.
The stupid solver people.
Yeah, stupid solver people.
Irrational.
This Greek concept of Kairos.
What's that?
It's about like opportune moment. It's a perfect timing for something. Like the right move can be a bad move if it's done in wrong timing.
Sure.
And wrong move is a right move if it's run used in good timing. And I think that confuses people a lot. Like they think, okay, I'm doing everything like my table says, and definitely I'm doing right thing. But no, now you had to deviate. You need to do something crazy. And also for when they observe some stupid play, they think from Bobby's room. I don't know those people, but some people call Bobby's room players making these big mistakes. But maybe those mistakes are made in the right moment, and like Kairos gives them such opportunity, and they are super smart. But then you think, okay, you're not playing right.
Are you trying to hint something here?
No.
That would have been funny if you were.
I'm speaking of myself too. Yeah, but I think everyone like that. We just use our metrics to decide like what is right, what is wrong, and when they do something wrong and it works, we find a way to excuse like, okay, they should not be done that. But no, it's Kairos. They found the perfect moment for that, and you were not smart enough to like predict their thinking. how they would deviate from their strategy at that moment.
Sometimes that happens, I guess. People have
Every
had
day.
enough and break in some kind of way and do something weird. We're conflating these words right and wrong a little bit. I just want to point that out because, like, at least when I think of the word right, I mean what's best for the circumstance. I don't mean what's right according to fucking, GTO Wizard or whatever. Or right according to some theory. I mean some like abstract theory. That's not. I mean what's right. Period. In terms of getting the desired outcome. So right doesn't really can't really be wrong, at least from that perspective, unless. Yeah, it can only be right relative to a certain point of view.
Apply to practice what is right, what is wrong, not to theory. In theory, you can always be right, and it's good. Okay, it's easy. I understand. Yeah.
In theory, it can mean fucking anything if it's not. Just with me, the best. The theories, there's loads of theories and they're not perfectly aligned with reality, so they're often wrong in that sense compared to that theory. But best option in reality, that's how the best option in reality works.
I think best is just connection of different theories. You just apply different angles. And this multi-perspective view, I think this is much closer to reality. If you not only use GTO, you use also exploit.
We did theory connecting all the theories. The ultimate theory. Personally curious, if you want to say, would you typify anything for my personality on the poker table that makes me exploitable? I don't know if you would or not, but I don't think I fall into either of those two categories perfectly.
You mean any of your behavior that I can transpose to poker behavior that could be exploited?
Yeah, and especially considering our experience with practical philosophy. So you've seen the deeper sides of myself a little bit.
Okay, I think you're a guy of a lot of expectations, to expect specific behavior from others, specific outcomes from turns and rivers. And so creating those discrepancies from what you expect could destabilize you for a moment. You are quite good in control, but still, if it's like a lot of those, can create more chaos than you would want. So it could be good to join games when some more chaotic player or creative player like Gus Hansen joins the game, and you just as a third guy, you understand this. Okay, now weird dynamics that Gus is creating for your expectations, they will be creating nice spots, nice opportunities. You will try to decrease uncertainty in some spots, and sometimes because you're an expressive guy and you want to be in control, and then you want to sometimes outsmart. You want to be on top of this, and then you try to be more creative than Gus Hansen, and we all know what happens when you try that, because it's impossible. And that's just like you just enjoy. You sit there and you just enjoy this fight of those creativity, and you just earn some money that you later can lose in some summer.
Well, I want to hear more about the Bobby's Room people. We mentioned that as a topic. Do you think any of them have some glaring personality traits that really show up in their game?
I think it's applied to everyone, no exceptions. Like we all have subjectivity, we all have some paradigm that we view life through, even if it's like paradigm of being outside of any paradigm. Like you mentioned, theory of theories. It's still a paradigm. It's still, and it will also apply to poker, to everything. So I think every person had it, and it's always shown in a game. You cannot avoid it. For myself, I know a lot of things that are just like will be shown, and also being aware of those and understanding how people do people really pay attention? Do they get it, or they can be easily fooled, or they are blind, so they just in their cards and their GTO. And if you distinguish those players, you can predict how they will adapt to you, and you will just readjust. Well, okay, this guy knows something about me. I gonna play more straightforward now, or no, I be more creative now. You just try to through a dice and just random number generator, and you generate strategy. Okay, you can play straightforward, I can play straightforward, we can play creative, we can play passive, aggressive, whatever. We just decide what to play, loose and tight. We have all the arsenal, all the tools, and then we just choose what applies the best. If we're aware of some weakness of ours or some specific of ours, and we know that somebody at the table know that, when in a pot, we just try to take this into account.
Sorry, excuse me. My instrument fell. Yeah, I'm a flute player now.
Wow, nice.
I also have some stuffed animals, by the way.
Wow. We can
pins.
think how that affects your poker game.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that I may have some creativity. I think that's most obvious thing.
You want to express, you want to look look creative. So maybe in like you're rational inside and you're playing GTO, but you want to look like crazy. You want to pretend that you are expressive. Am I revealing too much? Tell me, I will stop.
That can certainly happen. It really depends. That you have to be quite creative to do that in the first place. Do you have any weaknesses yourself?
I can sometimes be stuck in my expectations too. I like feel that game is good, and I just ignore like how I feel and how other people adjusted to me, and I would ignore that and think whatever. I'm a good player. I gonna figure this out, and I just stay in a game longer than I should. I think it's a bigger weakness that's been quite a long time with me, and after I realize that, I have a control over that, but sometimes I just like, okay, I know that, but whatever. It will cost me a bit, but we'll see if I can manage that or not. Then with this little sign, I will either quit or I will take control over. Quite aware of my weaknesses, so they're not so much weaknesses anymore. So like, okay, I know my tendency to jump into action. I'm a reactive guy. No, I'm very reactive. I understand that my reactiveness will bring a lot of troubles if I don't use it right. So if some people are emotional at the table, for example, they're losing much or they're winning much and they're bragging about that, or they're crying and saying, oh, whatever, I lost everything I had. I know that can affect me. So I will take a deep breath, I will take pause, and I will just remind myself what I'm here for. But in the past, it would affect my game a lot. When I was not aware of that, I would just like, okay, you're losing much, really? Okay, I give up. Let's stop the game. Let's quit the game. Or somebody is drunk and they play me. I will not play. I would never play a player who is drunk. But later, okay, they're quite adult people. They are responsible for their actions. They want to win my money, even though they're drunk. They're blind a bit. They don't have good work etiquette, whatever. Now I will play them. Yeah, I will not like win all the money or whatever, but I will not reject the game. But in the past, like first 10 years, say, I would just never play hands against drunk player. I would just, okay, you're drunk, stop playing. Like I was father for everyone. And that would be my weakness. I would think like, okay, I'm responsible for this. He's not in control of himself now. So I will need to protect him. So this crazy thinking can happen. And if you're not aware of that, it's quite destructive. It's a weakness. Emotions can get over. But also when I know about my reactiveness, it also has a sensitivity, right? I'm sensitive to little detail. I notice that you are a bit bored, that English is not so easy to catch for you, so you translate to people. I get these little things, and I understand it's my strength also. So this is nice to have to understand weakness. Okay, maybe my accent is not perfect. Maybe I'm too broad, too abstract, or speaking too much. Okay, I will adjust sometimes. Also, I can work on that outside.
Oh, that makes sense. I'm curious, actually, one of my personal thoughts would be the duality of, in my view, you're like being a little bit too kind to these people and leaving money on the table. But there is certainly a point where people are too fucked up, or you're taking too much money that it's hurting them too much. They have to not be pros. If they're professional poker players, well, the line's quite far away. You could take quite a bit of money for professional. But there are situations where people are too fucked up, I think, where they're degenerates and it's not ethical to take their money. Specifically in the case where they're like a degenerate poker player and you do things to become a predator on them. I think there are lines, specifically in the case of recreational players, people aren't pros. Then it's not really right to do things to exacerbate their losses. This becomes evil, in my opinion.
I have this view. I will express my view on this point because it can be viewed from different sides. You are professional. You come for specific games. Rules are known for everyone. They will lose money anyways, so to someone else, to different pro, and you don't take them. They are stupid. They will not stay with money anyways, and you just decided not to take those, which is stupid. Another perspective that you just described. But I have a view on that when I'm playing against such players, I would try to not worsen if they're tilting players and they're losing much, I will not try to, it definitely would be effective in terms of EV to try to get them mad, to make them mad. I wouldn't do that. I would rather, okay, calm down, maybe take a break. So it's like even out a little bit and get them more into control, so they have a chance. But if they don't take a chance, okay, whatever. I gave them the chance. I did more than others would do for them to get out of this trap. And I also have some sort of, okay, let's play. For example, I noticed something that the person gonna lose all the money they have, and it's like a lot. I would think, okay, let's play another 2 hours. So I would just take some of that because I'm professional. So it's like trying to sit on both chairs, to be ethical and to be greedy and professional and win a lot of money. So I'm trying to find a balance each time. And I think it's a nice game. Nice always to be questioning both positions. First position is to be father of them, and another position to be just like a machine that takes all they have. I think you can be both.
Yeah, well, there is such a way in which these things balance out. I mean, actually, this is a great doorway into the practical philosophy side of things, by the way. Ooh, but wait a second. I think actually there's an answer to the first one that's pretty clear. I realized it myself, but basically, you know, everything's kind of connected, and even in games, there's leakage to outside games or outside things as well. And, you know, it was Lao Tzu that said if you want to compete with someone, it has to be treated as play, and that you actually want to compete with someone at their best. I mean, like, if someone's going to show up and be drunk, I mean, okay, that's on them, but you still don't want to like get them into a situation where they're going to play worse and worse. And if you do, like, basically you've shown that you're willing to compromise the spirit of the game and your relationship with them and, you know, their well-being for the sake of your bottom line. And that's something that transcends the game a little bit. And rightfully so, you can see how this plays out in people not wanting to deal with other people that do such kinds of things. There's definitely a lot of feelings that go beyond poker when people try these sorts of dirty tactics. And I am going to throw someone under the bus here named Oppenheim, who's very notorious for doing this and gets loads of shit for being an asshole for this reason. And I don't know, he thinks it's like okay or something, but actually it's he's the only one who's doing it for a reason. And in this case, and other people kind of realize intuitively, without like the sound logic behind it, that there's leakage of these sorts of behaviors, and it pisses off lots of people. And he seems to think that angling and other bets and stuff like that is also fair game, but not really. No.
I have a different view. I think you're just responsible for your views. If I'm David, if I am David Oppenheim, I would act differently, but I'm not David Oppenheim. So what I can do here is when I'm at the table with him, I understand his logic, his approach to the game, to relations, to everything, and I just take this into account. So I cannot blame them, oh, he's trying to angle me or whatever. Well, I know what game I'm playing. I know the guy I'm dealing with, and I know the limits he has. And I know how it affects his life in general. It's very hard for such people to trust anyone. Like if you know that trust is a practical thing and you can manipulate it, you will expect it from others. And I understand how it affects his game. So he just pays the price. And it's okay. I can deal with that. I can deal with people who just try to manipulate me. Whatever. I'm fine anyways. I think it's a choice of what people do. Like if you are that person, okay, then you apply those rules. Either those come from whatever, religion, ethics or philosophy or spirituality or own, I don't know, where moral standards come from parents, teachers. When you transpose your moral stuff to other person, that's probably too much. Because, well, if you look at yourself 10, 20, 30 years ago, I'm sure your moral principles were different. Even if you would apply those moral principles from 10 years old, 20 years, 30 years old to yourself now, you would judge yourself as a bad person or the opposite, or you're a saint. But it just doesn't make sense. You just always try to take reality into account, but not to say that reality should be different. We're coming back to expectations and to
We're kind of getting actually to what I consider to be a bit about the grand theory of like how ethics plays out. And actually what you're suggesting happens to be in line with something called Advaita Vedanta, but it's rarely communicated in a way that is understood in the context of how people in the Western world understand ethics. But basically, I more or less agree with what you're saying. Let's put it in a different way so that what satisfies precisely like how things are communicated. But let's put it like this. Okay, let me give you another example that's more in line of what you're saying. So Tom Dwan and I had a disagreement for a while, and I would text him and say, hey, Tom, I need to get this money. You still owe me this money, blah, blah, blah. And at some point he says to me, you know, you think that you've got to respond to messages of people owing you money, you know, fast. And I think differently. And, you know, my response to that is, well, motherfucker, like, you can justify any fucking evil that you want to, like any fucked up thing that you want to. You could go around fucking shooting people and you could say the same fucking thing to me, dude. Like, or anyone could do this. They could literally just go around shooting people or whatever. And someone like in my shoes could be, or your shoes could be, hey, you know, that's not cool that you're shooting people. And they could fucking just say what you just said to me. Like, hey, this is this guy's way of viewing things. It's different from your way of viewing things. I'm going to do things my way. And right. So the point of this, really, where we tie everything all together is what's good for the collective. It's not good for the collective to angle shoot in bets. It's not good for the collective to like get people in the wrong kinds of mindsets. Maybe you can agree with this. It's not good for the collective to go around shooting people. In that case, there's one similarity between everything. It's what's good for the collective. And then it's this mentality of like, okay, are we going to continuously try to adopt what's good for the collective and create an environment that's good for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Or are we going to lay in whatever arbitrary position that seems to not be ultimately beneficial, such as you suggested, Oppenheim's way of doing things of like not trusting people and manipulating trust, which ultimately fucks him in the long run is the idea because he has to deal with the fact that he never trusts anybody. Like, sure, everyone has the power to choose whatever. Cool. Well, it seems like there are better options than others in terms of experience, right?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
can you agree with all what I'm saying here? And I'm personally voting for the things, as far as I'm concerned with poker, and as far as the people with poker are concerned with things, I'm trying to do things that are most beneficial for everybody and for myself all at once, that are maximally, optimally, as much beneficial
yeah.
as possible. And
It's
I'm not perfect, and neither is anyone else. So we can expect people to fuck up a bit along the way, such as Mr. Oppenheim, in my opinion. Okay, well, let's put it like this. If someone throws a punch at you, and you throw a punch back at them, between you two are equal. If someone throws a punch at another person and they don't throw a punch back, then they're the bad guy and the other person's not the bad guy.
okay. So in your worldview, justice is about equality, right? It's equality.
Actually, the irony is it's about seeking that balanced line and rather, collectively bringing to that point. Sometimes when someone throws a punch, you shouldn't throw one back, actually. And it becomes more, if you're actually seeking justice, you should do nothing because there's another aspect of this where you have to protect yourself, right? In which case you should do something back. But if they do throw, not necessarily even a punch, if it's an insult or anything like that, the only way ultimately to get to the balance line, and by the way, this is in GTO, it's like suggested very strongly by GTO, by bots, like basically playing out the prisoner's dilemma. You basically need what's called something called grace. This is what forgiveness, grace, to not strike back at certain points in order to end the cycle of conflict and then get to this base point where we're all treating each other fairly. But you have to do both, actually. Tactically, retaliation is also in GTO too, because if there's no retaliation, you get perpetually fucked over if it's a reoccurring problem. And if that's why I said if it's a recurring pattern, you need to protect yourself. But if it's an isolated one, or if like they think that they're defending themselves, for example, you need to like not strike back.
You're thinking of this GTO in life, and funny thing that GTO means to win as much as possible against other person and like not allowed to lose anything. So it's a competition paradigm. You're like constantly moving towards some advantage and not to let others have advantage on you. But it's competitive paradigm, and it's not the only one. You could be cooperative, you could be just like lonely, you could be enjoying life and just taking into account the people. Okay, those people are competitive. Sometimes I'm in a mood to be in a competition, to come to Bobby's role and to play with David on his rules. Like, okay, we try to angle each other, try to make this justice and equality, whatever. And some other days, okay, I'm not in the mood, David. Sorry, I don't want to play today. But I will play with others. And some days I will not play at all. So just like having this different opportunities and understanding, okay, I'm entering this paradigm. And in that paradigm, I want to behave this way. And I understand like reality will be this way. I cannot expect it to be cooperative with me. It just doesn't give a shit like that. You take this into account that sometimes you meet people who are very cooperative, who want to make goods in long term.
Cooperative people usually find the cooperative people. This is very clearly shown with reality, by the way.
They never come to this paradise of cooperative people because cooperative people will be exploited by some anglers who will come and manipulate them. Their desire and openness and trustfulness, they will just use it because it's from different criteria. It's GTO for them. Okay, there is definitely exploitable people. They're not balanced. In order to be balanced, speaking of the prisoner's dilemma, you need to respond with the same act. And at some point you forgive, but not right away. Not you just don't do anything. Otherwise you will be exploited. If you run the simulation, other person will
correct.
just keep,
all that's in the
keep
simulation.
exploiting.
Yes.
Yeah, so you have to have different ideas to act. And sometimes you just don't play this prisoner's dilemma because you know you will be forced to act aggressively. If you go to some place with people like in some private game and outside of US, because US is so nice and people are so nice. But outside of US, there are many places where you play some private game. It's like atmosphere is full of hatred. People just like want to destroy you.
Like
They want
Bobby's
to
room?
take everything outside of Bobby's room. Bobby's room is a saint place. It's a part of paradise.
They want to destroy you emotionally. They don't want to destroy you bankroll wise.
People quite nice in Bobby's room, at least before COVID. I don't know what COVID did.
Very honorable,
people.
yeah. They're not really
Yeah.
being a little bit facetious, to be fair.
Yeah.
They're not so
Yeah.
bad. They're grumpy and feel like they should win all the time. So then that's how they take it
Yeah,
out.
it's about expectations. That is why it frustrates you, because you have it. You want to win all the time too. If we're coming to this idea of idealism, it's always the struggle. You always fight with what reality is. You always expect cooperative people to help cooperative people and push those others away, but they will always be around.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's hard to like reach infinity where there's no one ever screwing anyone over in anything. Yeah, of course, that's fucking basically impossible, but you can make it better and better, right? You can still play better and better in poker, and you can't become the perfect poker player, but you can become the perfect poker player of sorts by continuously getting better all the time. This is basically what I'm getting at here.
I think it's a responsibility of every person to do that to the extent possible, but sometimes it's not. Like, for example, imagine somebody is in big debts, okay, in like big debts, and then some drunk gambler comes and decides to lose money. Are you gonna give up your addicts now and say that, okay, I will not take more money than some amount of you, or you will take as much as possible because you have another responsibility? Or even it's not
Right.
debt, it's some like you are responsible for a large family, or you're responsible for humanity. You just want to put people on Mars.
Yes, there's always going to be some continuous contingency where things aren't 100% perfect. I would take a step back and look at the bigger picture of, instead of trying to find the precise answer for every single situation, as if we're a poker player opening up GTO Wizard and saying, oh, I'm going to become the perfect poker player. I'm going to memorize all these situations. But oh, wait, I don't know what to do when I 3-bet the flop and this guy calls and now it's the turn. Now it's the turns of 7. Oh, fuck, I don't know that spot. Oh, no, what about this spot? And then what about the spot where I check raise the river and he goes all in? Oh, fuck, I don't know that spot either. I'm never going to be perfect. Why do I even try?
Yeah, make you anxious.
Instead of looking at the bigger picture of we're continuously getting better and better. And, one day we'll find the answer to what we'll do on the 3-bet, river spot when we check raise ace 7, 5, king 6, and he moved all in. Oh, fuck. We'll know the perfect range, or, we'll get to that when we get to that. You know what I'm saying? I'm kind of like advocating the overall tendency of like, let's be good poker players and not do things with the intention. The word is energy, actually. That word actually works really well. Of being shitheads. And that's the mentality I preach. If people don't have that energy, they can fuck off and go fuck each other away from all the good people that do have that energy. And people attract each other as secret and all that stuff. And maybe you can agree with that one. I do think we should discuss practical philosophy when we're speaking about practical things. I was not planning on talking about this, by the way, but what do you think?
I think they're already ruining their life. It's like no more punishment needed for those. If you consider reality as moving towards this perfect solution at some point eventually, you're always dissatisfied. If you think that one day I will be, if you put this idea in your mind for a second, it puts you in constant dissatisfaction and anxiety and always moving. You cannot just relax. But if you know that, like, okay, it's never achievable, I will not know all the spots, and I just accept this, my finitude. Like, okay, I'm human. It's like as much as I could do. It's the same as other people. They're humans, and we don't know what kind of conditions they started with, right? Maybe they started from such awful conditions that alternative would be them to become some killers. Okay, they didn't become killers. They become just anglers and poker game. Nice. I'm glad for them. They're just like make a very good job. And I probably wouldn't do this good job in that spot. Like there's a chance I would fail. And they didn't fail. Okay, nice. They could move further. Fine, they could. But if they want.
But let's go to the practical part of this philosophy discussion.
Just taking into account what is reality is. You just use common sense. You expect from people what they are capable of. Don't expect what they're not. Same from yourself. It's very practical. If you know that cannot always play perfect, you just forgive yourself about mistakes. You just write them down. You review them to improve your intuition, to train it, and use your analytical
Yep.
thinking to improve your intuition. That's very practical. And when you face some person who makes you like put you in frustration or anger or whatever, then you just write down what made you mad at him, and you just work on that, work on yourself. That okay, that will happen. Like in poker games, I don't know how many real poker games percent wise they're just full of only nice people who are cooperative, competitive, fair. I don't know what is the percentage. What do you think? What is the percentage of the games you played in general? In
lot.
your it's like 50%.
More than that, dude.
More than 50%, when like all people at the table were not angling, we're not thinking of personal gain, and would just like go
Easily.
for the spirit of the game. Oh wow, I think we live in a very different realities. Because for me, I would send it's about 10%.
In my view, everyone has plenty of good aspects to them. And just because, like, you know, all these guys who have these pitchforks for all the people who've done something bad, I don't think they're looking at themselves very much, because they've done lots of bad fucking things too. And their mentalities about things are not perfect. And I'm not really expecting people to be perfect, even as you say. I'm just like pointing out a glaring black part of what, you know, like I personally dealt with Opie and saw it, where he's like, clearly, if we're talking about, it's a little bit annoying, like having to keep taking this into account, this like free will thing. But if we're talking about really like an ideal way of doing things, he's definitely not there in almost anyone's view. But like a lot of people, generally speaking, all I see is lots of good things, man. I see lots of fair behavior. I see people doing lots of fair things. Even this thing with Nacho recently, the guy punished himself, man, for having GTO Wizard open. Like, that's pretty strong. You know, even from a guy that was supposedly described as a goofball, I see people behaving fairly. I see people doing all kinds of things where I don't see a whole lot of angling, honestly. It happens kind of rarely. I don't see a whole lot of like, you know, active cheating. Like, there's loads of games that just kind of, it's this sort of silent information where we're just so used to it, it's normal. And then when something bad happens, we kind of freak out. But yeah, like the energy of some kind of dissonance and something fucked up is somewhere in lots of people. But if that's the case, then everyone's bad in some kind of way. Like, there's all different ways to cheat other people that don't have to do with money, or do have to do with money and they're a bit more subtle, or have to do with business, for example. And it's the same principle, just in some other contexts, and they have that in them, and they just haven't discovered it yet. Like, this is the whole reason why power corrupts, because power just gives you like a shitload more options and opportunities to do something bad. It's not that it corrupts, it just exposes what was already there inside. In my opinion, it corrupts, but the corruption was there, is what I'm saying. It just was buried because no one had the options to exploit it. Instagram being a good example. Like, Instagram just showed what was in humanity the entire time and gave it a giant platform. It's not that humanity was fucking perfect before Instagram. Humanity was just locked down. And now, you know, the breadth of like our power is kind of awakening, and all this fucked up shit's like surfacing.
Very much agree. Yeah, I think we're all humans, and we have these parts, even ourselves. Like when we move to something good, we still fail quite a lot. I don't know about yourself, but I
Sure.
fail quite a lot. As a parent, I want to be a good
Sure.
parent, and comparing to other parents, I think I'm quite good. But I'm doing mistakes, including the ones that I regret for a few hours, almost daily. Like, I have a lot of opportunities to make a mistake. I try my best. Sometimes I'm not in the right mood, or I'm busy, or I just like didn't pay enough attention, or I put too much attention, which happens to me even more frequently. And I'm not a good parent, a good husband, child, whatever. It's just like we have so many roles. Accepting that we will be punished and we will pay the price for being not perfect. It's just like part of the game. We will pay this price, and others will pay their price. If you want to pay smaller price, okay, try harder and be in a better conditions. Just be more lucky to not be forced to do many mistakes. Yeah, but I think there are mechanisms. There are mechanisms besides ourselves being justice warriors. Just control ourselves, work on ourselves, and then there are like police, rules in poker game.
You think police are bad people? Are they justice warriors?
Yeah, I think it's their job. It's their job to do if they do it right. Lucky us that there is somebody like those. In ancient times, I imagine we all had to talk a lot and punish, and also give some presents to others who behave good. We would do it a lot. But like with kids, it's constant feedback. We always give them feedback. We don't go bring them to hell if they do something bad, and we don't bring them to paradise if they do something good. They need to be always in the middle. They all like, okay, this step is toward hell. This step is toward paradise. Keep moving and get your own experience. What is that? But accept that you will be moving those steps and others will. You just can either be aware that you are making moves in both directions or not. And I think that's it.
Well, one thing that we're kind of dancing around this whole topics of philosophies. This is what the religions were very much near to, that about these that approach these concepts of heaven and hell. I mean, one thing that I personally realized, or was starting to begin to realize, is you're dancing around it as well. You're saying like nothing will ever be perfect, but at some point you kind of come to this conclusion of like, okay, well, maybe perfection is not really ever attainable in an outside place, but you can approach a perfect view and a perfect way of approaching all the situations from inside, and then actually it's first the place that should be sought inside than outside, right? Because like that's your whole operation of control, and if you did that, then that would maximize your own experience later on and create eventually a better reality outside as well. Would you agree with all that?
Yes. I think world is perfect. It just this perfection looks differently from idealistic views.
That's also in the ancient philosophies and stuff, by the way, in like all of them.
Definitely, I couldn't invent anything. But I read almost none of those. I'm not much into history or philosophy or anything. It's just like speaking about that or thinking about that. And I think the good approach that is practical. I'm now doing a program, just running like experiment. I want to bring a couple dozens of people, work on systematic approach to own life, to view on situations. I think this first principle thinking and systematic approach is a practical way to move towards perfection, still accepting that we will not take into account all this stuff. So it's a kind of compromise. And you touched on that too. In few things you say it, I heard this approach too.
Yeah, I want you to tell us more about that, by the way. That's practical philosophy stuff. And actually, we came to a very similar definition of greed. Actually, the definition that would be used in other places would be called sin, by the way. It's very, very similar from what I can see. I don't know if you agree with that or not. But yeah, do you agree about my comparison of this concept of sin to greed? It looks very similar to me, if I'm honest.
It's sin and idealistic view of things.
Well, yeah, idealistic, I get that.
Yeah, it implies like you can be out of greed. You can be not greedy at all. But no, or you imply that everybody is sinful, which is like a part of Christianity, right? Everyone was born with sin and whatever. Every evening people speak to God to forgive them about the sinfulness. I think greed is just part of humanity. You just need to be aware of that. Just need to be aware that it's like high expectations, it's ambitions, it's constant dissatisfaction, it's a lot of anxiety. Greed is you cross a lot of lines, you make a lot of compromises with enough. Yeah, enough is a good state in many aspects of life. But if you are greedy, you often just go beyond this enough for no reason, and you're just constantly greedy. It's a bottomless thing. You just keep making some more of something. But what is the point? So it's a bit pointless activity. But it's part of every human. If you put your greed into good, like you could be greedy to be helpful. You could be greedy to be knowledgeable at some place. You could be greedy to know GTO in poker is the best. Okay, that's a good use of greed. But if you just say I want to exclude greed, then you're never a good poker player, because it's enough to know rules, to play some game, to not earn much more money, to make better living, to help others, whatever. If you're not greedy, you never do your own podcast. Yeah, almost not, because it's a lot of work. You need to be ambitious. You need to want to reach more people. It's a good part of greed. So if you call it sin, then you just remove all the good parts of it. And if you want without greed, you would be boring.
Like, it's not bad to have something. I mean, maybe this is what these Eastern philosophies use desire to, but everything you're saying works with Eastern philosophy too, not just Christianity. And the greed would just be like overreaching, like wanting something too much in line with what's optimal way of doing things appears to be the case. Like, I guess that's what they call like desires, is like a disproportionate, a craving, these kinds of ideas.
Yeah,
right.
Craving and need instead of desire. You can prioritize something and it's fine. But if you just crave for it, then it's a problem.
Why don't you talk more about what your you're actually working on your project, your practical philosophy stuff? Because like a lot of
Yeah.
philosophy is like, how the fuck do you use it especially until like, we're actually dealing with reality. And I had a couple sessions with you. You were quite illuminating, actually. You helped me through a couple difficult situations. Had some interesting approaches. Yeah, go ahead. Your turn.
I'm quite practical guy. I thought books are not practical, so I didn't read books until I don't know. But there are other reasons too. But until 27 or 30 years old, I didn't read books because I think it's not practical. And playing poker is practical. It's highest EV, whatever. At some point, I came to seminar with some French philosopher, Oscar Benefia, who's a quite harsh guy, and he would in minutes or in seconds would understand some basic pattern of person who is speaking to. There was a seminar with some big entrepreneurs in a region I was living back then in Russia, like 40-50 years old people, about 50 people, all successful, somewhat smart, and in few seconds speaking to each of them, he would note some pattern or some like core idea. What are they about? For example, they are not hearing other people. They are not interested in other people. So egocentric, and they cannot be in a dialogue. And he would spot it immediately. You see it and cannot unsee. And it attracts me so much. I took a session with him and spoke about some. I don't even remember what was the question. I think it was quite tough period in poker. Like I got 4 cheaters, one after another. I just hated poker at that point. In 10 minutes, I couldn't tell him that I'm a poker player. He would ask me, what do you do for a living? And I would say, I'm analyzing situations. I'm coming from different things to take advantage, given the data. Was some chaos, some just nothing. And then I was speaking about stuff and he would say, is it hard to focus for you? And at that point, I was playing like 24 tables in poker. Like, what are you talking about? Hard to focus for me? I'm playing 24 tables. Person without focus could not do that. He would just put a mirror in front of me and I would see myself so differently. And it was so practical. So I started working with him one-on-one for maybe 3 or 4 years. I would come to France for seminar. I would attend all the like museum stuff he had, all the workshops, come to different places and everywhere, going online everywhere. I was playing 2000, 4000 or higher in Bobby's room. And then I would just go out of the game to have my 1.5 weekly session with him because I thought it's so something profound there. It's just like very important stuff. Understanding not just GTO, not as players, but humanity as a whole and people as humans. After about 3 years working one-on-one, I finished over a year. I put over a year of education in his program, and they're in levels, like 1 year, level 1, 2, and 3. I was qualified to level 3, and I asked also to participate in level 2. So I would do 2 educations at the same time. And at some point, I also added in English. I would do it in Russian, but I added in English. So I was doing 3 programs, about maybe 8 hours a day. I would just do for a year, mostly involved some practice to work with other people outside. After that, I just decided, okay, I will tell it's so nice. I want to tell people I think I'm ready. Like Nietzschean guy who came from mountains. Okay, I'm ready to speak to people.
Who is this that came from mountains? The Nietzsche guy? Who?
Yeah, Zarathustra. You know, it's hard doing podcast and acting stuff and the other stuff that you're doing. You're familiar with that. You're quite more brave than me to come out of comfort zone. Well, like everything is fine. Why would you convince people that thinking and knowing oneself is important? Well, it's boring. Nobody thinks that their thinking is broken. Everybody is a good thinker. They can admit that their body is out of shape, but no, they're good thinkers. Even if they have some problem in thinking, they have advantages in other place. It's all this compensated, whatever. Just like very few people realize they need to work on thinking and to knowing oneself. Finally became brave and decided, okay, I will offer 10 people to work on some course for 5 weeks. 10 people came and we worked on profiling. It was my first experience. And also I had to learn all the stuff. I need to organize course, organize marketing. I need to be blogger, just the stuff that I never do before. I was just playing poker, winning at poker, all is fine, being with my family. But being with strangers, with outside people, it's not my cup of tea. I'm not much into being part of community, speaking about them. Like even in high stakes poker, was speaking maybe with less than 5 people, maybe less than 3, like 3 people in total. So with this experience, it was a bit hard to start, but I started the course. It went well. In 2 months after that, I made another course. First was on profiling people, how to make a profile out of little sentences and questions. Then it was course on argumentation and problematization, when you shift paradigm, when you're stuck in one perspective
I think
or
you
another
taught me
person is
problematization. Yeah, that was where I got the word from. Problematization of figuring out what exactly the problem is.
idea of Hegel that everything can be problematized. In every good, you can find something bad. And in what is bad, you can find something good. You remember the example about my reactiveness and sensitivity that I gave you that could lead to some bad stuff and also to some good stuff, like noticing little details. And then in every fate, it's good to be aware of those and see them in perspective. Like greed is not a sin, but it's more complex stuff that also help. And also the idea of Nietzsche is this transvaluation, like you always rethink any value from a different perspective. Like any value should be seen both as good and bad. But whatever, it's problematization. Then it was a course on Socratic dialogue. Yeah, Socratic dialogues was a long one, 9 weeks. It was like combining everything and working on your questioning. It's quite hard. You need to understand person in front of you. You need to spot problems and arguments. You need to shift paradigms. You need to work with resistance. Like you need to be aware of your own psychological things that have always come there when conversation is hard about deep issues and it's like hard. And then I run 3 months free club for people who worked in different programs or their friends and family members, about 30 people. For 3 months, we worked on goals. I decided it's practical philosophy. Let's try not to go out of those meta competencies, as they are called. This argumentation is like meta competency. It's applied to anything. It's everywhere. Applied to oneself, to some work environment, when you're a conference or meeting. It applied to speaking with your children, to make them think, to make them reflect, to explore. Those are meta competencies. But I decided if they can be applied to just achieving goals. And it was like coaching work that I never done before. It was very hard. I always apply what I learn, I always apply to practice. Otherwise, I cannot learn. I cannot remember things for long. If I learn about some idea, in October, I started to write coding with AI. AI made such improvements that I started to code. And it's such a nice opportunity to apply your every idea into real life. You can just develop and deploy in a few days some idea and some instrument, some helpful tool. And also at that point, I wanted to apply those meta competencies to achieving goals. And for 3 months was nice results about, it was random people. Some of them didn't know me. Some of them were not prepared, were some sort of depression or stuff, even though I said no people come burn out people and come people with some sort of depression. No, visit psychologists. It needs to be work first, or psychiatrist, depends on his level. Just like everyone from different backgrounds, and still like 80% came to the end of 3 months program that was very intense. It had 3 seminars that were like 8 hours long, even 2 days long, some of them. And every week we had 3-hour sessions. Like it's a lot for busy people. It's a lot.
Really?
And 80% finished, like 80% achieved their goals. People who finished all had very nice reviews and like was nice result. So in a month I opened a club and I offered only 5 people who I thought that could join. It's long work, people needs to fit well together. It's expensive. It's commitment that you need to keep for a long time, not just 3 months, but for a year. And we worked for a year, meeting with 4 people out of 5 people, 4 agreed to join. And we spent a year with some seminars, live seminars in Thailand and Turkey, like full weeks from morning to evening. Every week we would meet twice for 2.5-hour sessions, and all of them are very busy. Like 2 of them having 2 companies to run at the same time. So each of them was running 2 companies, having kids, moving to other places. All of them are very busy people. And about, I think, 95% of all sessions were visited on average by people, all full year. So it's quite a good signal that it's something useful is there. Those people I knew. I gradually knew them through some open sessions I would do for 2 years. I would do open sessions for everyone to join, to work on their thinking and self-knowledge. Only, 20, 30 people would come, maybe 50 people in general. In total, they would just mix it, and 10 people at each session would come. We would work. But to attract external people was hard step. And I just announced a few days ago, the program where I invite 30 people to work on now systematic thinking. Every time I try something different, I never repeat the course. We're working on systematic thinking, and it also has poker poker model. So people could apply this ideas from self-knowledge, from working on their thinking, from organizing life, deconstructing and first principles, the industries they're in and situations, life situations, work situations they're into first principles, and applying those to poker. So there is 2 months program that I decided to run now, and we'll see what is happening. Not many people saw announcements, not many people responded so far, but from what I know, it is a good one. And with all the AI tools, I'm trying to combine now this technologies, all this new ChatGPT and Claude and everything else. I'm quite involved in this for a few years now, from the very beginning actually. I see the power of it, and I see that people don't realize how it can be useful.
2 questions. They're 2 kind of big questions. One are the ways that they can be used, ChatGPT, etc. But I also want to ask, how can they use this course for systematic thinking in their daily lives?
For LLMs, large language models like ChatGPT and others, there are specific techniques. First, I realized that every competency that I worked in is so helpful, like critical thinking, argumentation, and questioning. It's just conceptualization. Yeah, when you spot the main essence of something and you give it to large language model and then you interpret what it gives you with critical mind, it's quite helpful. So there are some techniques how to write a prompt or write a dialogue. It's more about, yeah, maybe you can ask some task, any task you have, some idea, and I will tell you how ChatGPT could be applied to solve it or to help with that. And also systematic thinking, how can be helpful with that too.
What are the best places to go see in a new area that, if they can be broken down properly, if we're going to include restaurants by practicality, can they be linked or listed? And then also unique things that people do, conventions.
It's boring part of what this tool can be used, but we will still apply it. In fact, our friends, very non-technical, they just don't know how to use a phone actually. Very non-technical. I showed them how to use it for their trip. The way we prepared 2 trips and the way I showed to them was similar. I gave the details of the trip, dates, people who are coming, like 3 kids, wife, what our interests are, what do we like, what we don't like. I would also include alternative, like it would be 2 schedules at the same time. One is more intense, and if at some point we become more tired, we can shift to alternative schedule that is more relaxed, and we could come back to hotel early, or go outside after spending some time. So we had very detailed, like where we have dinner and where we have lunch. It should be walking distance. We're going to Singapore and it was hot at that time. So we wanted to have not more than 15 minutes of walking. And to spend a week there, we would have the plan that is so detailed and also like constructor, like Lego. You could replace blocks with it when we are more tired or when it's raining. It was third option. When it's raining on some days, we would just go for that one. Regardless if we have energy or not, we go for that one. And we visited, it was super intense. At the same time, we never got tired out of this trip. And for systematic approach, if we apply to that, it comes first to understanding what we want. It's not easy. People don't know what they want. Some people know what they don't want, what they don't like. Okay, that is the first step, but they don't know what they want. The main part of the job we do, become self-aware out of what are my values, what is the hierarchy of values, what is more important than the other when they come into conflict. Like your examples from poker, when there's ethics and also EV, they come together. Be good person or protect yourself, or go for equality with some over-aggressive person. Like there are different things, and what is decisive factors there is our axiology, hierarchy of values. What is more important and less important. Most people don't know what it is. They just react what comes to them. But if they're aware about their strengths, about their behavioral, communicational, thinking patterns, like, okay, people some getting stubborn, and they don't know they're getting stubborn. They just not aware of them. And if you're aware that you can get stubborn, okay, you ask this ChatGPT to just create more different options. And also you ask your family to decide which option to take. Like you can be stubborn to follow one of these 3 plans. And then your stubbornness is controlled. It's taken into account.
I never thought of it like that. I have like a few different plans, and then ChatGPT gives you a few plans and you can like follow them and work things out this way with your travel schedule. Like that could be a reasonable approach.
Yeah, and about systematic think, I developed one, I call it multi-perspective agents. I think many people do them. It's like you digitalize some good thinker or some personality. Like, for example, I have Elon Musk. I describe him, I think it's about 1 page long, how he thinks, like what perspective he uses. It's like physics first, disruptive thinker who decomposes stuff into first principles. It questions the fundamental assumptions. It comes with innovative solutions. And this personality is digitalized, and through different techniques, I train, say, ChatGPT to use this personality to play this role, and it plays quite well. And when I have some situation, some idea about going some plans, some personal issues, some coding project, and when I have this idea, I want insights from Elon Musk on that. But I cannot reach them for now. So I have his digital version, and I have 15 of those. Like Jeff Bezos is there. There's some good marketologists. It's different agents. What I did with that, they have 3 different modes. One is just single work of single agent. It just goes through your situation from beginning to start. It thinks out loud. It questions themselves. It decomposes and comes with a solution and further questions to you. And another mode is a council. It's like group of agents, 3 agents with 1 moderator. Moderator is always something with critical thinking. There are a few options for that. And 3 people, they discuss with each other from different perspectives. For example, if I want brainstorm, then I will have Elon Musk, I will have marketologist, it's like combined entity of different things. I will have UX designer and behaviorist from behavioral understanding how behavioral psychology works. So they 4, they discuss. First, each of them, they tell something what they think about the situation. Then second step, they involved into critical dialogue. They all start to critically observe, discuss ideas of each other. And then there's a third step of synthesis when they try to come up with a solution. And they come up with 2 solutions. 2 different approaches I use: the systematic thinking that decomposes the stuff from different perspectives. And it works for personal stuff too.
That's quite an interesting idea. I never heard of that one. The course is something that it would teach you to do something like this. I thought it would just like help you with, solving various problems using method of practical philosophy.
First task to do to apply it is yourself. You decompose yourself. You use this thinking approach and this dialogue, very tight dialogue. Dialogue is usually, it's like 2 monologues. One speaks after each other, expressing opinions, and that's it. But real dialogue, like Socratic dialogue, is very tight, like body to body. You keep moving very closely. So you using this method, you use competencies to decompose your life into different aspects of life to see what you value the most, what are your fundamental assumptions and presuppositions in this particular area of life, what are your obstacles, what are your strong parts, how they all interact with each other. Like if you have a goal, you just decompose what affects your current situation and your goal and the path. You have different forces that affect in a different way. Some of them create loops, feedback loops, negative or positive. Some forces are affecting numbers. For example, in podcasts, what affects podcast viewers? Interviewer, guest, those are affected. Guest is affected by in what mood they come, if they slept enough, and what kind of life stage they're at. And subject matter also, how actual is that? If it's if it's ChatGPT, okay, it's hyped now, everyone speaks about it, or maybe not anymore already. But if it's some stoicism, then it's not out of time. Kairos is not good. So there are different things that affect it. And if interesting guest comes or interview becomes interesting, it creates feedback loop, like more interesting guests come. And just like it creates this compound effect, the more views you get. And the better you create your 10-15 seconds, the better you become at creating your 10 and 15 seconds. What we do is just we decompose stuff. What are the forces that affect important stuff? And what are distractions? What are negative feedback loops that distract you from achieving goals, from living life you want, doing stuff you want? It doesn't have any specific agenda. It doesn't have some values that we will learn. You also get different perspective from the group work and also from me as a facilitator. They have different perspective because sometimes it's hard to see blind spots by yourself. This process, you just become more aware and more effective and Your decisions are now based on real goals. You have tools to do them. You have practice to work through them, and you're aware of some blind spots that created an obstacle for them.
I didn't know it was a Socratic method. That's interesting.
Socratic method is a part where you, by using questions, you take some knowledge, some common sense truth from a person into realities. You make him aware through the questioning. It's one of the tools. It's not the only one.
Any last words, Alex? Is Kostritsyn?
No, nice to talk to you, to speak of things out loud, not some more closed community or just by myself. It's always good to have different perspective on things and to try to apply them in real life. Nice.
I agree. Well, best of luck, especially if you come back to Bobby's room. Be sure to not get swindled by some motherfuckers and beat them and not reveal too much of your thought process against the super sharks out there that might study this video and understand who you are, what you're gonna do now.
Yeah, but in poker, I'm just monkey. I'm just crazy monkey. I do random stuff. You know that, right? So whatever I
That's
say, I'm so
ridiculous.
rational, but in life, I'm different.
All right. Well, we'll see you later, Alex. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Bye.